He had built his life from nothing, starting with a small shop in a quiet part of the city and working long hours to turn it into a business empire. Now in his 40s, he was a billionaire, but he never let wealth change who he was. He was known for being generous, thoughtful, and deeply loyal to the people who mattered most in his life. Among them, his mother was the most important. She was an elderly woman, gentle and wise, who had raised him with love and sacrifice. Despite his riches, he always treated her with the respect and care she deserved. His life was filled with both work and family, but he had also found someone who had captured his heart. She was young, beautiful, and charismatic, someone who had the ability to light up any room she entered. Friends and colleagues admired her, and she seemed perfect for him. At least that was what he believed. Their relationship had been passionate and full of laughter. She had a charm that seemed to match his ambition and drive, and for a long time he thought they were a perfect pair. As the story began, he was preparing for a special family dinner. It was not just any dinner. It was an important evening where his fiancée would spend time with his mother and other close relatives. He had spent hours arranging everything, making sure every detail was perfect. From the flowers on the table to the lighting in the dining room, nothing was left to chance. He wanted this dinner to be a beautiful experience, a moment where his fiancée could see the warmth of his family and the love that had shaped him. His mother, who had always been gentle and caring, was excited to meet his fiancé. She had heard much about her, though she had also been cautious. She believed in giving people a chance, but she had her instincts. A mother always knows when something is off. Still, she wore her smile and prepared herself to welcome this young woman into their home. She spent the morning tidying the house, arranging flowers, and ensuring everything was ready. Her care and dedication had always been the cornerstone of their family home. As the evening approached, the billionaire watched his fiancée get ready. She was wearing an elegant dress, her hair perfectly styled, and her demeanor confident. She seemed to enjoy the attention she received, but there was a subtle arrogance that he had noticed before, though he had often dismissed it as harmless confidence. Tonight he hoped she would show kindness and respect toward his mother, someone who had given him everything. The guests began to arrive, and the house filled with laughter and conversation. Friends, relatives, and a few business associates were there, but the focus was on the personal connection, the bonds of family and love. The billionaire's mother greeted everyone warmly, her eyes shining with pride and care. She moved gracefully from guest to guest, making them feel welcome and appreciated. She had always been the heart of their home, a person whose presence brought comfort and joy. The dinner started with polite conversation and gentle laughter. Everyone was enjoying the food and the ambiance. At first, it seemed like the evening was going perfectly. The fiancé smiled, laughed, and seemed to charm everyone in the room. But beneath the surface, subtle tensions began to show. The billionaire noticed the way she spoke to his mother, the tone that seemed slightly impatient or dismissive, though it was hidden behind polite words. He felt a flicker of unease but tried to brush it off, thinking it might just be a misunderstanding. As the dinner progressed, the fiancé's behavior became more noticeable. She interrupted his mother while she was speaking, not out of excitement but as if she thought her words were more important. She made small, sarcastic comments that could have been taken as jokes, but the way she said them carried an edge. The billionaire watched silently, feeling a growing discomfort. He had always known his mother deserved respect, and it pained him to see someone treat her otherwise, even subtly. Other family members began to notice as well. A cousin exchanged a worried glance with him, and a close friend quietly commented on the fiancé's tone. These were small signs, but they were enough to make him realize that something was not right. He remembered how his mother had always warned him about people who could charm their way into a room, but lacked genuine kindness. He felt a knot in his stomach, a mix of disbelief and concern. Despite the growing tension, he continued to try to keep the evening pleasant. He engaged in conversations with both his mother and his fiancée, trying to bridge the gap, to see if her behavior was just an off night. He asked questions, told stories, and tried to create moments of connection, but each attempt seemed to be met with subtle resistance or a lack of genuine warmth from her. It was as if she was playing a role, performing for the guests rather than engaging sincerely with the people who mattered most to him. During the main course, a particularly sharp remark crossed his fiancé's lips, She commented on his mother's habits, something personal and sensitive with a hint of mockery that could not be ignored. The billionaire felt a rush of anger and disbelief. He looked at his mother, whose face had shown a brief flicker of hurt, quickly masked by a polite smile. He knew in that instant that this was more than just a misunderstanding or a lapse in judgment. It was a window into her true character. He remained calm outwardly, but inside a storm was brewing. He had always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, but this moment forced him to confront a reality he had been avoiding. He realized that no charm or beauty could make up for a lack of respect toward the people who shaped him, who had given him his life and values. His mother deserved better, and he could not ignore that. The rest of the dinner continued in a tense atmosphere, though he tried to maintain composure. He engaged his fiancée in conversation, hoping for a change in her tone, but it never came. Each word, each gesture seemed calculated, lacking warmth and empathy. The billionaire felt a growing clarity. He could no longer separate her public charm from her private disregard. The gap between who she appeared to be and who she truly was had become undeniable. After dinner, when the guests had left, he found a quiet moment with his mother. He could see the subtle signs of hurt she had tried to hide. He held her hand, expressing his gratitude and love, reassuring her that he had noticed, that he cared deeply. She smiled gently, her eyes reflecting both relief and concern. She did not need him to speak. The connection between them was profound, built over decades of love and shared life. Later, in the privacy of his study, he reflected on the evening. He thought about the fiancée, the subtle disrespect, and the small but telling incidents. He realized that wealth, charm, and appearance meant nothing if someone could not show basic respect to those who mattered most. He began to understand that the perfect life he had imagined was not as perfect as he had believed. His love for her was now weighed against the values he held dear, the loyalty to his family, and the care for his mother. As he sat alone, contemplating what to do next, he knew that the coming days would require careful thought. He could not make a decision in haste, but he also could not ignore the reality he had witnessed. The fiancé's true nature had revealed itself in a subtle but unmistakable way. The billionaire understood that love alone was not enough. Respect, kindness, and genuine character were essential, and those qualities were lacking. He made a silent promise to himself. He would protect his mother and his family from anyone who could harm them emotionally, intentionally or not. He would observe, seek clarity, and make a decision that aligned with his values. The evening had been a revelation, a moment that opened his eyes to truths he had tried to overlook. From this point on, nothing could be taken for granted. The first part of his journey had ended, not with drama or confrontation, but with realization. He had seen the hidden cracks in a relationship that seemed perfect on the surface. He had witnessed the subtle disrespect that could not be ignored. And he had felt the deep bond with his mother, a connection that no charm, beauty, or wealth could replace. The story was only beginning, and the choices he made next would shape not only his relationship but the emotional well-being of the person he loved most in the world. The next morning he woke up with the evening's events replaying in his mind. The image of his mother, hurt even for a moment, stayed with him. He went through his daily routine, but nothing felt normal. The laughter and charm of his fiancée now seemed hollow, and he could not shake the feeling that something in their relationship had shifted. He realized that ignoring what had happened would only make it worse. At breakfast, he watched his mother quietly arrange the table. She smiled when she saw him, but he noticed the subtle tension in her movements. He asked her about her night casually at first to see if she would speak freely. She said she had been fine and that everything was okay, but he could sense she was holding back. Mothers have a way of hiding their true feelings, but their eyes often speak louder than their words. He didn't press her, not yet, but he made a mental note to ensure she felt supported. When his fiancée arrived later in the morning, she seemed cheerful and unaware of the tension she had caused the night before. She greeted his mother with a polite smile, but the warmth he expected was missing. She made small talk, but it felt forced, like a performance rather than genuine connection. He could see the flicker of impatience when his mother spoke, a subtle roll of the eyes, a sigh. Gestures too quick to be noticed at first, but undeniable on closer inspection. He decided to observe her more carefully, not to confront her yet, but to understand if this behavior was a pattern or a one-time lapse. As the day went on, he noticed more signs. She questioned his mother's decisions casually, speaking as if her opinion was more informed, more valuable. She made faintly mocking comments about his mother's routines, her cooking, and even her way of speaking. To the untrained eye, these could have passed as jokes, but he knew his mother's dignity deserved respect, not sarcasm. He felt torn. He loved his fiancée and wanted to believe in her goodness, but his love for his mother and his respect for the values she had instilled in him made it impossible to ignore these signs. He began to question how well he truly knew his fiancée. Had he seen her as she was all along, or had he been blinded by charm and beauty? Later, he met her in the living room while she sipped her coffee, trying to keep the conversation light. He asked her casual questions about her family and her day, looking for warmth and connection. She answered politely, but every answer seemed calculated. There was no curiosity, no interest in his mother or family life beyond the surface. It was as if she had rehearsed her words, aiming to maintain a perfect image rather than build genuine relationships. At one point, his mother came into the room to offer tea. The fiancé accepted with a small smile, but as soon as his mother left, she muttered something under her breath. He caught it, soft, almost inaudible, but filled with disdain. He felt a jolt of anger. This was not the accidental tone of a bad day. It was deliberate, revealing her true attitude. He realized then that the charm, the smiles, and the elegance could not hide the lack of respect she had for the people who mattered most to him. Determined to understand more, he reached out to a close friend who had spent time around his fiancée. He asked casually if she had always behaved this way around older people, especially parents. The friend hesitated at first, then recounted a few moments from social gatherings where she had made dismissive or cutting remarks, often hidden behind laughter or jokes. These incidents had seemed harmless to outsiders, but to those who paid attention, they revealed a pattern. The billionaire listened quietly, absorbing every detail, feeling a mix of disappointment and confirmation. The day passed slowly, each hour reinforcing the truth he had started to see the night before. He felt the weight of his responsibility, not just to himself but to his mother. Love could not blind him to the reality that his fiancée might never show the respect and kindness that were core to his family values. He began to plan a careful approach, wanting to address the situation without causing unnecessary confrontation, yet knowing that clarity was essential. That evening, he decided to host a small dinner for just the three of them. He wanted a private moment, away from the eyes of staff and friends, where he could observe her behavior more closely and see if she would act differently when there was no audience. As they sat down, he paid attention to the subtleties, the tone of her voice, the gestures, the way she interacted with his mother. Each small action seemed to confirm what he had feared. There was no genuine warmth, no empathy, only a polite facade. During the dinner, his fiancée asked questions about his work, about his travels, but there was little interest in his mother's stories or thoughts. When his mother spoke, she responded quickly, often interrupting or correcting in a way that undermined his mother without appearing openly rude. He felt a tightening in his chest. How could someone who appeared so charming behave so carelessly with the people who had shaped him? The contradiction was stark and painful. After dinner, he suggested a walk in the garden to enjoy the evening air. It was a chance to speak candidly without the pressure of the dining table. They walked slowly, the night calm and quiet. He began to gently ask questions, trying to understand her intentions, her feelings toward his mother. She responded carefully, avoiding any real admission, deflecting with vague answers and smiles that now seemed hollow. He realized that charm alone could not cover a lack of true character. He returned home, feeling more certain than ever that he needed to address the situation. He spent hours reflecting, reviewing every interaction, every word, every gesture. He knew he could not base a lifelong decision on a few isolated moments, but the pattern was clear. Her behavior was consistent, intentional, and hurtful, even if subtly so. He felt a mixture of sadness and resolve. He loved her, but he loved his mother more. The respect, care, and loyalty he owed to her could not be compromised. Late that night, he sat quietly with his mother once again. He watched her sleep, peaceful yet vulnerable, and he realized that his decision would have to come soon. He needed to protect the people who had given him everything, the people who had stood by him through every struggle and triumph. The day's revelations had left no doubt. He could not ignore the truth any longer. In the following days, he began paying closer attention to every interaction. He noticed more subtleties: how she spoke to the staff, how she reacted to situations where she did not get her way, and how she treated his mother when she thought no one was looking. Each small detail painted a clearer picture, confirming what he had already sensed. The charming facade was just that, a facade. He decided it was time for a more direct approach. He would have to confront her not with anger, but with clarity and honesty. He needed to understand why she behaved this way, and whether there was any possibility of change. He knew it would be difficult, but he also understood that avoidance would only prolong the inevitable pain. His love for her was real, but it was not enough to ignore fundamental flaws in character that affected the people he held dear. He prepared himself mentally, thinking about how to speak without escalating conflict, how to remain calm, and how to ensure his mother's dignity remained intact throughout. He reflected on the values he had grown up with, the importance of respect, empathy, and family bonds. These values were non-negotiable, and he knew that any partner in his life would have to share them sincerely. As part 2 of the story closed, the billionaire faced a turning point. He had seen her true colors, not in a dramatic outburst, but in subtle actions and words that revealed her lack of respect. He knew the coming confrontation would define the future of his relationship. The choice before him was not just about love, but about loyalty, integrity, and the protection of those he cared for most. His mind was clear, his heart heavy, but he was ready to face the truth and the difficult decisions that lay ahead. He waited 2 more days before saying anything. During that time, he kept watching, observing every detail, hoping perhaps he had misunderstood her actions. But what he saw only confirmed his worries. The way she talked to people when she thought no one important was listening revealed more than words ever could. She was polite when it suited her, but cold when she had nothing to gain. His mother remained kind, never showing any resentment. She went on with her daily routine, helping around the house, watering her plants, reading her favorite books, but he could sense her unease. She tried to stay out of the way when his fiancée was around, as if not wanting to be a burden. That small change in his mother's behavior broke his heart more than anything else. His home, once peaceful and full of warmth, now felt heavy with unspoken tension. One evening, he invited his fiancée for a quiet dinner, just the 2 of them. He planned it carefully, making sure there would be no distractions, no friends, and no business calls. He wanted this night to be honest, a turning point. The setting was calm, the lights soft, and the atmosphere peaceful. She arrived looking elegant as always, her smile perfect, her tone cheerful, but he had made up his mind. This was the night for truth. They started dinner with light conversation. He asked about her day, her plans, and listened as she spoke with her usual confidence. She talked about her goals, her social circle, and future events she wanted to attend. He let her speak, watching closely, looking for sincerity in her words. After a while, he leaned forward and said quietly, "Can I ask you something honest?" She looked up, surprised by his tone. "Of course," she said, smiling, though her eyes showed a flicker of caution. He took a breath and said, "Do you think you've been kind to my mother?" Her smile faded slightly, but she quickly tried to cover it up. "What do you mean?" "Of course I have. I've always been polite to her." "Polite," he repeated softly. "Yes, maybe polite, but not kind." She frowned. "I don't understand what you're saying. Are you accusing me of something?" He shook his head gently. "No, I'm not accusing. I'm asking. Because I've noticed how you speak to her, how you look at her sometimes. I've seen the little things you think no one notices. The impatience, the dismissive tone, the way you correct her or mock her habits. You may not realize it, but I see it all." Her expression changed, her voice turning defensive. "You're exaggerating. Maybe you're just being sensitive. She's old-fashioned, and sometimes I joke around, but it doesn't mean I don't respect her." He sighed quietly. "Respect isn't about words. It's about how you make someone feel. She doesn't feel welcome anymore. She's been avoiding you because she feels small around you, and that's not something I can ignore." For a moment, silence filled the room. She looked away, her confidence shaken. Then in a softer tone, she said, "You're misunderstanding me. I never meant to hurt her. Maybe I just need time to adjust." He listened carefully. "Time helps if the intention is right. But I need to know your heart, because the way you treat my mother tells me who you truly are. I can't build a future with someone who can't respect the person who gave me everything." She put down her fork and leaned back in her chair, studying him. Are you really judging me based on that one evening? You know how much pressure I was under. Maybe she just doesn't like me and you're taking her side. He looked her in the eyes. I'm not taking sides. I'm protecting what's right. My mother is the kindest person I know. She never said a bad word about you even after that dinner. She tried to make excuses for your behavior, but I saw the hurt. I can't pretend I didn't. Her expression hardened. So what are you saying? That you'd choose her over me? He didn't hesitate. If I have to choose between love and respect for my mother, I will always choose her. The words hung in the air, heavy and unbreakable. She sat still, her face tight with frustration. After a moment, she stood up and walked to the window, looking out in silence. I didn't think you'd turn this into something so serious, she said after a long pause. I thought you were different. I thought you'd understand that not everyone connects easily with older people. He rose slowly from his seat and walked toward her. I don't expect perfection, but I do expect empathy. You don't have to agree with her on everything, but you should treat her with kindness. You know what she means to me? She turned to face him, her eyes flashing with emotion. Maybe you're just looking for someone who acts the way you want, not someone who's real. He took a deep breath and replied calmly, being real doesn't mean being unkind. My life is built on respect, on gratitude for the people who stood by me when I had nothing. My mother was there every step of the way. I can't let anyone come between that bond. The silence stretched. She looked at him, realizing that his words were not just emotion, they were truth. He wasn't angry or cruel. He was calm, honest, and certain, and that made his words impossible to argue against. Dinner ended quietly. She excused herself early, saying she needed space to think. He didn't stop her. He watched her leave, feeling both relief and sadness. He hadn't wanted things to reach this point, but it had to be said. The truth had been hanging between them for too long. Later that night, he sat with his mother again. She didn't ask what had happened, but she could sense something had changed. He told her softly that he had spoken to his fiancée, that he had been honest about what he'd seen. His mother looked at him for a long time, then reached out and held his hand. I just want you to be happy, she said quietly. But happiness built on disrespect will never last. Her words echoed in his mind for days. The house was quieter after that. His fiancée stopped visiting as often, giving vague excuses about work and personal matters. He didn't chase her. He wanted her to show through her actions that she understood what he had said. But nothing changed. When she did visit, her behavior remained the same, polite on the surface, distant underneath. He began to notice how different his home felt when she wasn't around. The laughter returned. His mother smiled more. The house seemed alive again. He realized that peace was worth more than appearances. The perfect image he had once believed in had faded, replaced by a deeper truth. Love without respect was an empty shell. One afternoon, his mother asked if he had made a decision. He nodded slowly. I think I already have, he said. I just need to accept it. That evening, he called his fiancée and asked to meet. They met at the same restaurant where they had shared many happy moments in the past. It was quiet, familiar and elegant. The kind of place where difficult conversations could be had with dignity. When she arrived, she smiled politely, but he could see the distance in her eyes. He thanked her for coming and began to speak. I've thought a lot about us, he said softly, about what we want and what kind of life we can build together. She listened, her expression unreadable. And? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew where this was going. I love you, he said, but love alone isn't enough. We come from different worlds, and I thought we could find balance between them. But I can't ignore what I've seen. The way you treat my mother, it may seem small to you, but it's everything to me. It shows me how you see the people who matter most. She looked down, silent. After a long pause, she said quietly, So this is it? He nodded. I think it has to be. She didn't argue. There were no tears, no dramatic words, just silence, heavy and final. She finished her drink, stood up and said, I hope you find what you're looking for. Then she walked away, leaving him sitting there in the dim light, feeling both heartbroken and free. When he returned home that night, his mother was waiting for him. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. She simply hugged him, and for the first time in weeks, he felt peace. That night, he sat by the window looking at the city lights below. He thought about love, about respect, and about the quiet strength it takes to walk away when something isn't right. He knew he had made the right choice. In life, wealth could buy many things, but not character, not compassion. And as he looked toward the future, he knew that whatever came next, he would never again compromise the values his mother had taught him. The days after their breakup felt strangely quiet. The billionaire had imagined that ending things would bring chaos, regret, or endless thinking about what could have been. Instead, he felt a stillness inside him. The noise in his heart was gone. For the first time in a long while, his house felt peaceful again. His mother smiled more often, the staff seemed more relaxed, and even the air inside the mansion seemed lighter. He spent more time with his mother during those weeks. They shared meals, went for walks, and talked about things they hadn't in years. He realized how much he had missed these moments. His success had kept him busy, always chasing one goal after another. But now he found joy in the simplest things, listening to his mother's stories, cooking together, and sitting on the porch during the evening breeze. His mother, though relieved, never spoke ill of his former fiancée. She was too kind for that. Instead, she reminded him that sometimes life brings people into our paths not to stay, but to teach us something. Those words stayed with him. He began to reflect on what he had learned from the relationship. It wasn't all pain. It had shown him what kind of love he truly needed. One built on understanding and respect, not charm or appearances. Still, as peaceful as life became, he could not avoid the outside world. Rumors started spreading slowly in business circles and social groups. Some said his breakup had been due to family disagreements. Others whispered that his mother had not approved of the relationship. He ignored most of it, knowing how quickly stories could twist in the world he lived in. But what caught his attention was how his former fiancée began to handle the situation. At first, she stayed silent, but then, in subtle ways, she began painting herself as the victim. She told mutual friends that she had been misunderstood, that his mother had never accepted her, and that he had chosen his family over love. The words stung when he first heard them, not because they were true, but because they showed how little she had learned. Instead of reflecting, she chose to play a role, to gain sympathy rather than self-awareness. He didn't respond publicly. He had no interest in defending himself or proving anyone wrong. His silence spoke louder than any statement could, but deep down he felt a quiet disappointment. He had hoped that even if they couldn't be together, she would at least walk away with dignity. Instead, she chose pride over truth. His mother noticed his quietness one afternoon as they had tea in the garden. She asked gently, "Are people talking again?" He nodded. "Let them talk," she said softly. "Those who know you don't need explanations. Those who don't will believe what they want anyway." Her words calmed him just as they always had. She had a way of bringing peace simply by reminding him of what truly mattered. One evening, as he was leaving his office, he ran into an old friend who had known both him and his ex-fiancée well. They chatted briefly, and then his friend said something that stayed with him. "You know, sometimes you can tell what a person's heart is made of by how they treat others when they lose something." She's showing her truth now. Those words rang true. He didn't need to do anything. The truth had a way of revealing itself. People began noticing how his ex-fiancée's stories kept changing. Some who once admired her began to see the cracks behind the charm. The same charm that had once dazzled everyone was now beginning to wear thin. Meanwhile, he continued to focus on his work and his family. He launched a new foundation dedicated to helping elderly care homes, something inspired by his mother's compassion. The project brought him new purpose. He visited several centers personally, meeting people who reminded him of her, gentle, humble, and full of wisdom. Those visits healed him in ways he didn't expect. He began to see that kindness, the very value his mother had taught him, was more powerful than any success or relationship. Months passed. One morning, as he was preparing for a business meeting, his assistant walked in and mentioned that his ex-fiancée wanted to meet him. She had sent a message saying she wanted to apologize in person. He hesitated for a long moment. A part of him wondered if there was any point. But another part believed that closure, if done with sincerity, could be meaningful. He agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe away from the city center. When she arrived, she looked different, less polished, less confident, but more real somehow. She smiled softly and said, "Thank you for meeting me." He nodded politely. "It's been a while," he said. She sighed and looked down at her cup. I know, I wanted to say sorry. I said things after our breakup that weren't fair. I blamed your mother when I shouldn't have. I think I was just hurt. I wasn't used to being told that I was wrong. He listened quietly, not interrupting. Her tone was calmer now, less defensive than before. I realized something, she continued. You were right about respect. I didn't understand what it meant until I lost everything. I was so focused on being accepted that I forgot to show real kindness. I can't change what I did, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He had expected excuses, maybe even anger, but what he heard sounded genuine. I appreciate your honesty, he said finally. It takes courage to admit that, she nodded. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to make peace with it. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it, your mother, and I'm sorry for that too. Her words brought a quiet relief. He realized that sometimes time changes people in ways arguments never could. My mother never held a grudge, he said softly. She always wished you well. Tears welled in her eyes. She's a good woman, she said quietly. I should have learned from her instead of trying to impress her. They talked for a little while longer, not as lovers or enemies, but as two people who had once shared something important. When they finally parted, there was no bitterness, only understanding. He wished her peace and she thanked him before leaving, walking away with a quiet dignity that had been missing before. When he got home, his mother noticed the calm in his eyes and smiled knowingly. He told her about the meeting. She listened, nodding, and said, Everyone learns in their own time. Sometimes we meet the wrong people so we can learn to appreciate the right ones. That night, as he sat in his study, he thought about how far he had come. The man who had once been blinded by appearances was now guided by values. He had learned that love without empathy was hollow, and that kindness was not a weakness but a strength. His journey had not just been about losing someone, it had been about finding himself again. Over the next few weeks, the story around him began to shift. People who once whispered about his breakup now spoke about his new foundation, his kindness, and his integrity. His example inspired others not because of his wealth, but because of how he had handled pain, with grace and patience. His ex-fiancée eventually moved to another city, starting a new life quietly. He never saw her again, but he hoped she found peace and growth in her journey. For him, the experience had left a lasting lesson, that no matter how successful a person becomes, their true worth is measured by how they treat those who cannot give them anything in return. Life moved on gently. The seasons changed, the garden bloomed again, and laughter once more filled the house. His mother's health improved, and she often reminded him how proud she was, not for his achievements, but for his heart. He would smile and say, You taught me everything I know. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, his mother said, You know, sometimes the most painful experiences bring the clearest blessings. He nodded, knowing she was right. The pain had turned into peace, and the disappointment had turned into wisdom. In his heart, he carried gratitude for his mother, for the lessons life had taught him, and even for the mistakes that had shaped him. He knew now that real love was not found in perfection but in patience, not in grand gestures but in genuine kindness. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a deep, quiet happiness, the kind that comes from living in truth and holding close the values that never fade. Months had passed since everything had settled down, and the billionaire's life had found a new rhythm. He had grown calmer, wiser, and more patient. His mornings began with walks in the garden beside his mother, who always wore that gentle smile that reminded him of everything he had almost lost. They spoke about life, about small things, and sometimes about nothing at all. Those quiet conversations were now the best part of his day. He had built a balance between his business and personal life. The foundation for elderly care that he started had grown faster than he imagined. Every time he visited a home, he felt a warmth that no business deal could give him. The people there would smile and bless him, and he always thought of his mother's kindness. He wanted to carry her values into everything he did. One afternoon, he attended a gathering organized by one of the charities his company supported. The event was simple. No media, no photographers, just people coming together to celebrate kindness. While greeting guests, he met a woman who worked as a volunteer for the foundation. She was humble and soft-spoken, and her compassion for others showed in the way she interacted with people. She helped serve food, laughed easily, and never tried to impress anyone. Watching her reminded him of how genuine kindness looked. They spoke briefly about the project, and he noticed how deeply she cared about helping others. After the event, she thanked him for creating opportunities that made a difference. He smiled and said, "I should be the one thanking you. You're the one doing the real work." It was a simple exchange, but something about it stayed with him. In the weeks that followed, they crossed paths several times. Sometimes it was at a charity event, other times at the foundation office. Each time he found himself admiring her simplicity and honesty. She never seemed impressed by his status or wealth. To her, he was just another person who cared about helping others. It was refreshing. There was no pretense, no hidden motives, just mutual respect. His mother noticed his mood changing. She teased him gently one morning over breakfast, saying, "You've been smiling more lately. Should I know why?" He laughed and shook his head, though his mother's knowing look said she already understood. "She's good for you," she said softly. "You look peaceful again." He didn't rush anything this time. He had learned the value of patience, of letting things grow naturally. He continued his work, his visits, and his quiet moments with his mother. Yet somewhere along the way, that volunteer became a part of his daily thoughts. They started spending more time together, visiting homes, sharing ideas for new projects, or just talking about life. Their connection was built on shared values and sincerity, not appearances. One evening, after a long day of meetings, he visited the elderly care center. The volunteer was there, reading stories to a group of residents. Her voice was calm and gentle, and everyone listened with quiet joy. He watched from a distance for a while, feeling something shift inside him. When she finished, she looked up and smiled when she saw him. That smile, so genuine and unforced, made him realize what he truly wanted. Later, as they sat on a bench outside, the air cool and peaceful, he said quietly, "I used to think love was about finding someone who made life exciting. But now I see it's about finding someone who makes life feel calm." She looked at him with kind eyes and said, "Peace is the best kind of happiness." It was a simple moment, but it said everything. Months went by and their bond grew stronger. His mother adored her, often inviting her over for tea and long chats. She would laugh and tell him, "She reminds me of myself when I was younger." The warmth between them filled the house in a way he hadn't seen in years. It wasn't about replacing the past. It was about building something better, something real. One morning, as they all sat together in the garden, his mother said, "You've come a long way, my son. You've learned what truly matters." He nodded, feeling gratitude rise in his heart. "You taught me," he said softly. "You showed me what love and respect really mean." His mother smiled and squeezed his hand, her eyes full of pride. Time continued to move gently. The billionaire and the volunteer eventually became partners not just in work but in life. Their relationship wasn't about luxury or status. It was about shared purpose, honesty, and quiet support. He admired her selflessness and she respected his humility. Together, they continued expanding the foundation, touching lives and spreading kindness wherever they went. The people around them often said that he had changed. He no longer carried the air of distance that many once saw in him. His success was still there, but now it carried warmth instead of pride. When people asked him how he found peace after such a painful experience, he would simply say, "Sometimes losing what isn't right for you is the only way to find what is." He didn't look back on the past with bitterness. Instead, he saw it as part of his journey. His former fiancée's mistakes had taught him the importance of empathy. His mother's wisdom had guided him back to what truly mattered. And the woman he now loved reminded him that real happiness is found in giving, not in receiving. One rainy afternoon, he was invited to speak at an event about leadership and compassion. Standing on the stage, he spoke not as a billionaire, but as a man who had learned through life's lessons. He said, "Success means nothing if it isn't built on respect. True wealth is not measured by what you own, but by the peace you feel when you look around and know you've done right by others." The audience listened in silence, many touched by his words. After the event, he returned home to find his mother waiting for him. As she always did, she hugged him and said, "Your father would be proud." He smiled and replied, "I just followed your example." That night, As he sat by her side, watching the rain fall against the windows, he felt deeply thankful for everything life had brought him, the lessons, the losses, and the love that had finally come to him in the most unexpected way. Years later, when people spoke of him, they didn't just talk about his wealth or his empire. They talked about his kindness, the way he helped people, and the way he never forgot his roots. His story became an example for many, a reminder that no amount of success can replace goodness of heart. His mother lived to see all of it. Every time someone thanked her son for his work, she would smile and say, "He's just living the lessons life taught him." When she grew older, he cared for her the same way she had cared for him all those years. Their bond remained unbreakable, built on love, respect, and gratitude. When she eventually passed, he was heartbroken, but he carried her wisdom with him. He honored her memory by continuing the foundation's work, expanding it across countries. Her name became part of the organization's logo, a tribute to the woman who had shaped his heart. In time, he and his partner married in a small, private ceremony, surrounded by family and close friends. There were no grand decorations or lavish displays, just heartfelt vows, laughter, and the presence of people who truly cared. When he looked into her eyes, he felt peace again, the same peace his mother had once brought him. It was love built not on wealth or image, but on truth. As years went on, he continued to live humbly. He taught young entrepreneurs to focus not only on profits, but also on people. "Your business will grow," he would say, "but your character must grow faster." He had become a mentor to many, passing down not just knowledge, but the values that defined his journey. And sometimes, late at night, he would walk through the garden where his mother once sat, feeling the cool wind and remembering her words. The most painful experiences often bring the clearest blessings. He would smile softly, knowing how right she had been. The world around him had changed, but his heart had found what it had been searching for all along: a quiet, lasting happiness built on love, respect, and kindness. His story wasn't about revenge or regret. It was about redemption and growth. From heartbreak to healing, from pride to peace, his journey showed that even in the face of pain, a person can rise, rebuild, and rediscover the beauty of a good heart. And so, the man who once caught his fiancée disrespecting his mother became known not for the scandal that could have defined him, but for the grace with which he rose above it. In the end, his mother's lessons became his legacy, and his story became a gentle reminder that true greatness lies not in power, but in compassion.